Evan Myers had never been one for loud engines or flashy cars. To him, a car wasn't a trophy. It was a story on wheels. His grandfather had been a mechanic back in the day, a quiet, patient man who restored machines like they were living things. Growing up, Evan would sit on an overturned milk crate and watch his grandfather's weathered hands bring old engines back to life. The rhythmic clink of tools and soft smell of oil felt like home. Years passed. Life got busier, and dreams got tucked away in dusty corners of the mind. But one autumn afternoon, while browsing an estate auction, Evan saw it a Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, buried under a grey tarp, looking more like a forgotten relic than the elegant car it once was. Its tires were flat, its chrome dulled, and the engine coughed when touched. But Evan saw through the dust. He saw what it could be. 2 weeks later, a flatbed truck rolled slowly into his quiet neighborhood in Willow Ridge, carrying the broken beauty. As the straps were undone, sunlight revealed the soft curve of the fenders and the proud grille, even in its ruin. Evan stood there with a grin, hands in his pockets, as if greeting an old friend. He had no idea that this car would not just test his patience, it would turn his neighborhood upside down, across the street. A pair of blinds twitched. Mrs. Patricia Whitmore, known by most as HOA Karen behind closed doors, peered out with a look that could curdle fresh paint. She was the unofficial queen of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. If a trash bin was left out 5 minutes too long, she'd report it. If someone planted tulips instead of HOA-approved pansies, there'd be a letter on the door before nightfall. Her yard was flawless, her hedges perfectly squared, and her porch met clean twice a day. To her, the neighborhood wasn't just where she lived, it was her kingdom. And Evan's rusted Rolls Royce, resting a mere 12 feet from her meticulously aligned garden, was a stain on the fabric of order. She pulled out her phone, zoomed in, and took the first of what would be many photos. Unacceptable, she muttered. Absolutely unacceptable. Evan's garage became his sanctuary. After work, he'd change into his old coveralls, put on a playlist of soft jazz, and roll up his sleeves. The Silver Cloud was worse off than he expected. The frame had rust. The upholstery smelled like mothballs, and the left door didn't open at all. But beneath the wear and tear, the car had dignity. It just needed someone to believe in it again. He started slowly, removing the broken pieces, cleaning of layers of grime, and restoring the foundation. Every bolt he turned was like unearthing history. Neighbors walking their dogs began to slow down to watch. Children pressed their faces to the fence, fascinated by the shiny tools and steady rhythm of the work. Mrs. Green from across the street was the first to speak up. "You know," she said, balancing a lemonade pitcher, "my father had a Silver Cloud. I haven't seen one in years." "You're really bringing something special back," Evan smiled. "She's a little tired, but she'll shine again." Not everyone shared her enthusiasm. Behind the blinds, Karen continued her watch, scribbling in her little black HOA notebook. 2 weeks in, as Evan sanded down a panel, he noticed something bright stuck to his front door, a canary yellow slip that almost glowed in the sunlight. Notice of violation. Unauthorized storage of an inoperable vehicle on residential property. He read the rest with a slow exhale. He'd expected this. Karen was many things, but subtle wasn't one of them. Later that evening, he attended the HOA's open hour at the clubhouse. A handful of neighbors were there, sipping coffee under fluorescent lights. Karen sat at the table like a judge awaiting trial, the notice copy already in front of her. "This is a community of standards, Mr. Myers," she began smoothly. "We don't allow rusting heaps to ruin the view." Evan kept his voice calm. "It's not rusting. It's being restored. It's a historical vehicle with proper ownership and documentation." She raised a perfectly plucked brow. "And how long will this restoration take? Days? Weeks? Years?" "The HOA can't tolerate blight." Before he could answer, a voice came from the back. "Mrs. Green, blight?" "Patricia, it's a classic Rolls Royce." "He's doing something beautiful, not dumping trash on his lawn. A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Karen pursed her lips but said nothing more. Evan filed an appeal that night. Determined not to let this stream be bulldozed by paperwork, word spread around Willow Ridge faster than Karen could file a complaint. On weekends, curious neighbors would gather near Evan's driveway to peek at the transformation. A retired mechanic offered him spare parts at cost. A teen who loved cars volunteered to help clean chrome just to learn something. Even Mr. and Mrs. Vega, who barely spoke to anyone, brought him an old car manual they had kept from their own youth. The neighborhood, long kept on edge by strict HOA rules, suddenly had something to rally around, a shared story, a piece of history being revived in front of their eyes. Karen, however, wasn't pleased. Each time she saw a group gathering near the Rolls Royce, her jaw tightened. To her, this wasn't just a car, it was a challenge to her unspoken authority. She sent more letters, each one a little more formal than the last. But Evan had documentation, permits, and patience. Winter gave way to spring, and the silver cloud began to bloom along with the cherry trees. The body panels gleamed under a fresh coat of silver paint. The chrome grille was polished to a mirror finish, catching the morning light like liquid glass. New leather seats, soft cream with dark piping, were installed, making the interior smell of fresh craftsmanship. The once forgotten relic was beginning to look like royalty again. Every weekend, a small crowd gathered to admire the progress. Children left chalk drawings of the car on the sidewalk. Someone brought a little British flag and stuck it in the lawn as a joke. The neighborhood had never felt this united, except for one house. Behind her curtains, Karen stared at the now gleaming Rolls Royce as if it were a personal insult. On a bright Saturday morning, Evan wiped down the hood for the last time. It was finally done. The silver cloud stood proudly in his driveway, shimmering like a star in daylight. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a symbol of everything he'd worked for, every hour he'd spent bringing it back to life. That was the moment Karen chose to make her move. Dressed in her HOA blazer, she walked across the lawn with an envelope in hand. Her heels clicked on the concrete like a judge entering a courtroom. "Mr. Myers," she announced, loud enough for half the block to hear. "As per HOA policy regarding abandoned vehicles, I am officially claiming this car for removal or reassignment of ownership. You failed to comply with the community timeline." Gasps came from the gathered neighbors. Evan slowly set down his cloth. "This car is mine, Patricia. I bought it legally. It's registered, insured, and approved." She thrust the envelope at him. "You had months. No matter how shiny it looks, it's been stored here improperly. If you refuse to hand it over, we'll escalate." But what she didn't expect was that half the neighborhood had been watching and recording. The HOA would gather that evening at the community clubhouse. It was supposed to be a routine hearing, but nearly 30 neighbors filled the seats. Karen sat at the front, clutching her documents like a shield. Evan came with a folder of his own. Purchase receipts, state registration, restoration permits, and a printed email from the HOA's own office approving temporary restoration storage. He spoke clearly, without raising his voice. "I followed every rule. I applied for the exemption. I got it in writing. What she's trying to do is not enforcement, it's personal." Karen's cheeks flushed. "This is not personal," she snapped. "This is about standards. A neighborhood must have order, Mrs. Green stood up from the back row. "Order doesn't mean crushing people's dreams." He brought beauty back to this street. "Maybe for once, Patricia, the rulebook isn't the only thing that matters." A few people clapped. Then more. The board members exchanged uncomfortable looks. They knew this wasn't just about a car anymore. One board member cleared his throat. "Mr. Myers is in compliance with every requirement. There's no violation here. The vehicle is registered, restored, and not inoperable. This complaint is dismissed." Karen's hand clenched on the table, knuckles white. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she had nothing to say. Something changed after that night. People started waving more often. Lawn chairs appeared on porches again. The sense of community, buried under years of nitpicking rules, began to breathe again. Evan never sought to be the neighborhood hero. He just loved a car. But that restoration had reminded everyone that homes weren't just boxes in rows, they were places where stories could grow. Karen's curtains were still often closed. She'd walk by the Rolls Royce with a tight jaw, but she didn't say another word. Whether she felt defeated or reflective, no one knew. But her notebook grew dusty. The first warm Sunday of spring, Evan slid behind the wheel. The soft leather welcomed him like an old friend. The engine hummed with quiet pride as he turned the key. Neighbors gathered along the street as he slowly rolled down the block. Children waved. Adults clapped. Someone even played a bit of classical music from a speaker, as if announcing the entrance of royalty. He drove past Karen's house slowly, not out of spite, but with quiet triumph. She stood on her porch, arms folded, but her eyes flickered not with anger this time, but with something unreadable, perhaps even respect. Evan turned the corner, wind brushing against his arm through the open window. The neighborhood looked different now, not because the houses had changed, but because people had remembered what community could feel like when someone stood up, not with a fight, but with heart. The Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, once forgotten and broken, now carried more than its owner's dream. It carried a story, a reminder that sometimes beauty isn't in perfection or rules, but in the courage to bring something back to life when no one else believes in it. A few months later, the HOA board quietly amended their restoration policy, allowing residents to restore classic cars with reasonable time frames, no unnecessary complaints allowed. The Silver Cloud appeared on the cover of the neighborhood newsletter with the headline, "From Rust to Glory." A neighbor's restoration brings the community together. Even Karen, in a small corner of the photo, could be seen with the faintest of smiles. Evan parked the Silver Cloud under a soft cover at night now, not because of rules, but out of pride. Every time he walked past it, he thought of his grandfather's hands, the neighborhood's laughter, and that spring afternoon when dreams rolled down the street.